Good afternoon. It's Sunday, the 15th of January. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting live from Jerusalem. We open with the developments surrounding the investigation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In new transcripts revealed from recorded conversations between the Prime Minister and Yediot Ahronot publisher Arno Noni Moses, the two are heard discussing ways to give Netanyahu more favorable coverage in the leading newspaper in return for the Prime Minister's efforts to advance legislation that would reduce the impact of the Free Yisrael Hayom Daily, considered Yediot's top competitor and owned by Netanyahu's close friend, Sheldon Adelson. The latest in a series of leaks reported on Channel 2 features the two arch-rivals engaged in detailed conversations on how to reduce Yediot's hostility toward Netanyahu in order to ensure that he remains in power. Netanyahu is reportedly heard saying that what he expects under the possible deal is that the newspaper lower the level of antagonism towards him and called for more moderation in his coverage. Noni Moses was today questioned for the second time at the Lahav 433 Police Anti-Fraud Unit in Lod, and the Prime Minister is slated to be questioned under caution for the third time by the end of the week. His son Yair is also said to be among the growing list of people slated to give testimony to police this week. Responding to the latest recordings, Yediot's editor-in-chief, Ron Yaron, stressed today that journalists working at the newspaper would have surely left and looked for a new job if such a deal had gone through. In a front-page editorial, he urged that staff at Yediot remain loyal to its readers and not to those who pay their salaries. Reacting to the latest developments, Netanyahu said today that leaks from his conversations with Arnon Moses are a miserable attempt to mislead the public and obstruct the full picture in order to make it seem as if it were criminal. Speaking at a meeting with his Likud ministers this morning, Netanyahu said the truth will be revealed in the near future. Netanyahu once again advised members of the opposition to hold off on the celebrations, saying, "We are here and we will continue to lead the country for many more years." Speaking at the opening of the French Middle East Peace Summit in Paris today, French Foreign Minister Jacques-Marc Ayrault said the conference's aim is to push a two-state solution forward and foster direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians that will see the establishment of a Palestinian state. Foreign ministers and envoys from more than 70 countries attended the meeting that took place without the presence of Israeli and Palestinian representatives. The summit's objective is to promote peace, the French foreign minister said, emphasizing there is no time to waste. He also mentioned the objections from the advisors of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, who opposed the summit taking place just days before his inauguration. Ayrault noted that last month's UN Security Council resolution that condemned Israel's settlement building in fact put the peace process back on the agenda. Israel has rejected the conference, calling it a rigged effort that will only harm the Jewish state. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel will not be obligated by any decision taken there, adding, if anything, the conference pushes peace backward. On their part, the Palestinians welcome the fact that the French foreign minister referred to the plans to transfer the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, warning such a move will have serious consequences. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas warned U.S. President-elect Donald Trump and the U.S. administration yesterday that transferring the American embassy to Jerusalem will jeopardize all chances of peace and will result in the Palestinians refusing to recognize the Jewish state. The Palestinian leader made the statements shortly after meeting with Pope Francis in Vatican City. He later attended the opening of the new embassy of the State of Palestine in the Vatican. A statement issued by the Vatican described the talks with the Palestinian leader as cordial and called for the resumption of direct talks between Israel and the Palestinians. Just days after the U.S. House of Representatives passed a motion rejecting the recent UN Security Council resolution against Israel and threatened to cut funding to the world body, newly elected UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he is prepared to meet with the new U.S. administration and with American lawmakers to discuss all issues. The U.S. is the largest contributor to the UN and pays some 22% of the world body's core budget, as well as 28% of the UN peacekeeping budget.
As a matter of principle, the Secretary General very much welcomes an opportunity to discuss any issues with U.S. lawmakers, and we look forward under the new administration to the continuing strong partnership between the U.S. and the UN, especially in the three main pillars of human rights, peace and security, and development.
Joining us now in the studio to discuss topics making the headlines is Amotz Asel, a columnist at the Jerusalem Post. Thanks so much for coming in. Today, foreign ministers of some 70 countries met in Paris to discuss Israeli-Palestinian peace, but without the two key players, Israel and the Palestinians. Jerusalem has already rejected the summit, saying direct talks with the Palestinians is the only way to move forward. What kind of decisions can we expect from the summit?
I don't think anything effective can emerge from that conclave. If anything, this emerges unwittingly as a monument to 50 years of a very slanted and tilted French attitude towards the Middle East that harks back to Charles de Gaulle's treatment of Israel from the eve of the 6 Days War, when he turned his back at Israel and effectively reneged and signed agreements with it when he imposed an arms embargo, and then the morning after the war, when he tried to blame Israel for winning a war that others imposed on it. And since then, there's been a consistent French effort to, first of all, impose all kinds of peace ideas on Israel, and more broadly, to emerge as a counterbalance to America in the Middle East, as the French effort has been throughout the world. It failed yesterday, it fails today, and tomorrow it will clearly be replaced by an entirely redesigned international system, including, in all likelihood, a different France following the upcoming elections there.
Amotz, the Sunday Times reported after U.S. President, going on to a different subject, Donald Trump, President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration, the first world leader he plans to meet with is Russian President Vladimir Putin in Iceland. Last week we heard Russia was behind the campaign hacks and document leaks in the U.S. elections. How much influence do you think Putin will have in Trump's foreign policy agenda?
First of all, concerning the hacks, I would say, as I've said here before, they were more about Russian audacity than about Russian effectiveness. Yes, it's very audacious and brazen on Russia's part to try and meddle in America's internal affairs, but they did not, even indirectly or remotely or slightly, decide the result of this election. The American voter did. That's one thing that should be borne in mind. Having said this, there clearly is a quest on Donald Trump's part to make of Russia something entirely different from what it was for Obama. For Obama, there were an ideological problem because of their treatment of Ukraine, and generally because of their failure to democratize, which in Obama's book, and frankly even in George Bush's book before him, was not supposed to be, because history, the way Americans understood it after the Cold War, was progressing towards a global democratic future. This is a view that has since then become increasingly debated in the West, and Trump certainly does not share it. And he therefore says, Russia does not threaten directly any American interest, and the Russian economy does not threaten American jobs. The Chinese economy does, and the Chinese statesmen do in their commercial policies. And that is why he says, I'm changing course. I'm seeing in China a rival, and in Russia a potential partner in my rivalries with China.
Returning back home, in recent weeks we've been subjected to leaks of conversations between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Yediot Ahronot publisher Arnon Noni Moses. How will these latest allegations affect Netanyahu? Should the Prime Minister step down?
Everyone has to patiently now wait for at least several days and probably several weeks to see, first of all, what, if anything, evolves here on the legal plane. Does this or does this not produce indictments? I hear many forecasts, but we have to see what actually transpires in the field. As long as there have been no indictments, Netanyahu will sit solidly on his seat, certainly as far as he is concerned. And we can also see, looking very carefully, that his own party and his coalition partners are sticking with him for now. And all the efforts in recent days to try and detect cracks somewhere within there have failed. So that's one thing. As for the substance of the allegations, surely the presents that he has reportedly received from American-Israeli millionaire Arnon Milchan will rise and fall on the quantities and the frequencies and the motivations, and all this is yet to be fully uncovered, although it seems, at least aesthetically, very displeasing to the average Israeli who does not lead such a lifestyle and does not identify with those who see in this lifestyle a great aim. Concerning Arnon Moses, that's where the substance is much more alarming, at least publicly speaking. On the legal front, I hear from jurist Amnon Rubinstein, the dean of the IDC Law School, that things will rise or fall on the extent to which the meeting from which we've heard quotes had a continuation and aftermath and actually led to a deal which probably it didn't, and that is why today most analysts agreed that this will not produce convictions. However, on the public plane, the very fact that the Prime Minister discusses with a major publisher his paper's coverage and is prepared to sort of strike a deal with him concerning the substance of the coverage is very alarming, politically speaking, and even more so, journalistically speaking. That is why it seems as if Arnon Moses, the great pillar of Israeli print journalism for several decades by now, has made a big mistake.
Amotz Asael, it was great to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Laura.
Several hundred Israelis protested in Tel Aviv's Rabin Square last night, calling on Prime Minister Netanyahu to step down in the wake of corruption allegations against him. The protest was organized by the Meretz and Zionist Union parties. Some Knesset members also attended the demonstration. Yael Sinai, chairman of the Labour Party's youth wing and one of the organizers, accused the government of destroying all that is good in the country, adding the corruption, racism, incitement, and extremist laws passed in the Knesset are dragging the country down and isolating it from the rest of the world. The Jerusalem District Court today sentenced Ilan Shmuel, the former driver for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to 27 years in prison for the rape of 6 underage girls and a series of sexual offenses on minors aged 9 to 16. The court also ordered Shmuel to pay the sum of 940,000 shekels to the victims' families. Shmuel was employed as a substitute driver for Netanyahu up until 5 years ago. The Shin Bet security service informed police of the allegations against him, and they launched an investigation. Archeological excavations at the Sobibor extermination camp in Poland have uncovered dramatic finds, including an unusual pendant of a young girl named Caroline Cohen from Frankfurt that is identical to one once worn by Anna Frank. IBA's Ari O'Sullivan reports.
In a moving discovery made at the site of the former Nazi death camp Sobibor, a team of Polish, Dutch, and Israeli archaeologists discovered what they believe is the woman's undressing and shaving hut. It was located just 40 meters from the gas chambers, and it was here that women were stripped and hair shaven before they were murdered. Antiquities Authority archaeologist Yoram Haimi said at one point the Polish excavation workers started mumbling in excitement, and when he rushed over, he saw that they had discovered a pendant with Hebrew writing on it, and it said Mazal Tov. It turned out to have belonged to Caroline Cohen, a young girl born in July 1929, the same year as Anna Frank, the Dutch girl who authored a diary on the Holocaust. Further research found that she was born in Frankfurt and was deported to Minsk in 1941.
When Yoram Haimi approached us, we found that there were several transports that indeed departed from Frankfurt am Main. Unfortunately, we were unable to find a transport to Sobibor, but we did locate a transport from Frankfurt am Main to Minsk in the fall of 1941. Based on searches that we carried out, the only name that fit in terms of her birth date was a Jewish girl by the name of Caroline Cohen, whose birthday indeed is July 3rd, 1929, and she was on board a transport that we recorded that departed from Frankfurt am Main in November 1941 to Minsk ghetto.
Furthermore, the triangle-shaped pendant was exactly like the one that Anna Frank wore at her photograph and kept by her cousin Betty Elias. Efforts are underway to see if there is a connection between Caroline Cohen and Anna Frank. They're hoping that now people with similar pendants will come forward.
The very fact that Yoram Haimi was able to locate the gas chambers in Sobibor enabled us to estimate much more correctly the number of the victims, how many Jews were killed in this location. So I believe that this kind of knowledge can enlarge our understanding, can enlarge our insight into this chapter of history.
The digs at Sobibor also uncovered other items like bottles, dentures, and other pendants. Jaime says that the archaeological digs at Sobibor are important because it lets historians actually touch the Holocaust. Ari O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Syria accused Jerusalem of launching a missile strike on a military airbase outside of Damascus shortly after midnight Thursday and called on the United Nations to take action against the Jewish state. Reports out of Syria claimed at least 8 rockets were fired at the Meza military air base, causing explosions in Damascus and areas surrounding the capital. Smoke and flames were seen shooting from the area hit. There were no reports of casualties. Israel neither denied or confirmed the report, but has emphasized in the past that it will not allow the area to be used to smuggle what it has described as game-changing weapons sent by Hezbollah in Lebanon and Iran to Syria. In a rare sign of dissent in Gaza, thousands took to the streets of the Jabalia refugee camp this weekend to protest ongoing power cuts to the Strip. Reports out of Gaza said more than 200 protesters were arrested by Hamas, who also fired live rounds at demonstrators. For months, Gazans have been receiving no more than 3 hours of electricity a day due to lack of funds. The PA, which normally pays for the power supplied by Israel and Egypt, transfers fuel to Gaza and exempts it from most taxes. But because of its own financial constraints, the PA has recently stopped doing so. Angry protesters set pictures of PA President Mahmoud Abbas and Palestinian Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah on fire. Palestinians complain that the cuts are especially brutal due to the exceptionally cold weather the Strip is currently experiencing. Israeli officials noted that most of the funds given to Hamas rulers in Gaza goes towards boosting the terror organization's rocket capability and constructing attack tunnels. An American court ordered Syria and Iran to pay millions of dollars over a 2014 terror attack in Jerusalem. IBA's Sam Sokol has this report.
A Washington, D.C. court last week ruled that Syria and Iran must pay nearly $180 million in damages for the murder of an American-Israeli infant by a Palestinian terrorist 2 years ago. 3-month-old Chaya Zisselbron was killed in October 2014 when Silwan resident Abdelrahman al-Shaludi plowed his car into a crowded bus stop near Jerusalem's Ammunition Hill. Security services stated at the time that al-Shaludi, who had been released from jail less than a year earlier, had familial ties to Hamas, was an outspoken advocate of terror tactics. The court held Tehran and Damascus liable for the attack due to their monetary support for Hamas, which encouraged the so-called Car Intifada, a series of vehicular attacks by Palestinians against Israeli civilians in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria. Calling Iran and Syria the biggest state sponsors of terrorism in the world, Braun family attorney Nitzana Darshan-Leitner said that the judgment sent a clear message that there's a very heavy price to be paid for financing terrorism and spilling innocent blood in the streets of Jerusalem. Speaking with IBA News, Darshan-Leitner said that she does not expect the multi-million-dollar judgment to be vacated, as was a similar case she litigated in New York in 2015. In that case, a $655 million terror ruling against the Palestinian Authority was dropped over a jurisdictional issue. The Braun case, which was brought under a statute stripping foreign state sponsors of terrorism of their sovereign immunity, is on firmer legal footing, she said. This is Sam Sokol, IBA News.
Israeli singer and songwriter Meir Banai, who passed away last week, was laid to rest on Friday at Tel Aviv's Givat Shaul Cemetery. Hundreds of family members and friends attended the funeral of Banai, who died at the age of 55 after a long battle with cancer. Banai had numerous gold records, including the hit songs Geshem and Shar HaRachamim, and even acted in director Avi Nesher's hit film HaShovrim. Banai was the brother of comedian Orna Banai and singer of Yatar Banai. President Reuven Rivlin eulogized him, saying, "Every time I heard one of his songs, I identified with it, and my soul was transported to a place only music can take you." A sharp turn now, and it was a stunning win for an Israeli at the Africa Eco Race that wrapped up this weekend. 17-year-old Gev Sela shocked the racing world when he came in first in the grueling motorcycle competition. The race covers 6,500 kilometers and takes some 2 weeks to finish. During the event, riders deal with the harsh elements of the Sahara Desert, crossing through Morocco, Mauritania, and Senegal, navigating by a guidebook. Sela won 5 of the 12 stages and finished 50 minutes and 12 seconds ahead of his Norwegian rival. Sela told reporters at the finish line that it is unbelievable. He never thought it would happen. Staying in the spirit of positive news, here are 5 more stories that may give you a reason to smile as we kick off a new week. For starters, it's another Sela making headlines. Israeli tennis sensation Dudi Sela won the Canberra Challenger final in Australia on Saturday, claiming his 21st ATP Tennis Challenger Tour title. Israeli tap water sensor Bright Tap wins Global Entrepreneurship Prize at International Startup Competition. The small device can be attached to any faucet, providing cleaner water and lowering water bills. Israeli kits with prepared cake mixes intended for rice cookers are becoming a hit in China. The kits are the brainchild of Israeli company Uga Uga, which is now targeting some 400 million Chinese buyers online. Israel's fourth largest supermarket chain, Osher Ad, has opened its first branch in Brooklyn. It's called Bingo, and if successful, owners intend to open more stores in cities with large Jewish communities. And summing up 2016 and the number of exits made by Israeli companies, the end-of-year IVC Meitar market report shows that a whopping sum of $10 billion was made from selling Israeli companies and startups during the past year. In entertainment news, opening this week at the Tel Aviv Opera House is Lucia di Lammermoor, a tale of love, murder, madness, and suicide. The famous opera features an array of international performers and is conducted by world-renowned Daniel Caligari, who has conducted leading orchestras around the globe. The opera goes on stage on Tuesday and runs through the end of the month. In finance, the stock exchange is up and currency markets are still closed for the weekend. Here are the numbers. And the IBA's weather team says there will be a slight rise in temperatures tomorrow in what will be a mostly cloudy day with strong easterly winds in the morning hours in the north and central area. Here are the highs and lows at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same channel. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem. We leave you now with images of Mount Hermon from the weekend.